Hey everybody, DCB here again. So the other day I was searching around for a file on my computer when I came across some clips I made for my second Lego movie I was working on 12 years ago. I thought these files were long gone on an old computer that I no longer owned, so I was pleasantly surprised to see that I still had them. This movie was going to be a follow up to my first Lego movie I did back in the winter of 2013. So I thought I'd just sort of reminisce about the time I was really into making Lego movies. Um, the first one I did was called It Happened on Brick Avenue, which is a play on one of my favorite movies. It happened one night with Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert, though the plot would be completely different. I'd seen a few other Lego movies that were out at the time, and it really looked like something that I wanted to do. Um, I wanted to try my hand at animation since like forever, but I never had the means to do so. I never owned a movie camera or even had the resources to get one until the iPhone and the iPad came out. And with an app called iStop Motion, it was finally possible for me to make an animation on a budget. Again, this was like 12 years ago, so like the early days of the iPhone, but it was good enough for what I needed. And Lego was the obvious choice for a beginner to try animation, and I had a lot of it. The reason I had so much Lego back then was when my son was like 7 or 8 years old, I started to buy scale model kits, HO scale model kits, with the intention of building the HO train layout, because that's something I also wanted to try. So I started buying up kits and trains and scenery and paints and all the stuff you need for that hobby. I put a ton of money into it, but it never really got off the ground. I think mostly because I had eventually came to the realization that my son was just a tad too young at that point, and it would have ended up me building all this stuff and him just sort of watching. But I wanted something for him to be more involved in and feel it like it was more of a collaborative effort. And so it was around that time that the Lego modular firehouse building set was released. And we both thought that was pretty cool looking. So I decided to just sell off all the HO stuff and I bought that firehouse instead. And then had the plan of eventually building up a whole city of Lego with a train around it and everything that we could both work on together kind of over time. And if I remember right, the firehouse was the fourth set of the modular building series. And I saw that the previous sets were pretty costly already at that point, and that Lego sets, tend to go up in value. So I knew I should try and build them as soon as possible before they got too way prohibitively expensive. So I downloaded the instructions for them and I bought all the pieces I needed for them one at a time off of Bricklink. And then I continued to buy the rest of the modular sets as they were officially released by Lego. I was also buying a lot of private designers' instructions for buildings and vehicles and whatnot. And then I discovered an early Lego CAD program that you could, create your own Lego sets. So I designed 6 different custom sets that I would sell the instructions to, to kind of help supplement my Lego buying habits. This started with a KFC, and then I did a Pizza Hut, a Taco Bell, White Tower, Phillips 66, and a Dunkin' Donuts. I did get a cease and desist from Dunkin' Donuts for that set, so that was kind of interesting. And then after a few years, we had a pretty decently sized Lego city layout set up in my office. So then I thought I had enough of a movie set to play around in. And with the release of that animation program I mentioned, I decided it was the perfect time to make my movie. Though I wasn't quite sure what the movie would be about yet. I knew I wanted to be something completely different than anything else I had seen done in Lego. So I kind of looked through the different spots in my city and imagined what kind of story I could tell in them. There were a lot of potential filming locations in it, but I kept kind of coming back to the bus stop that I had put in front of the Emporium, and I thought that might be a good place to start since there's always a good variety of characters at a bus stop, and so many interesting scenarios that can happen at one. So the movie starts out with a pan across showing everyone at the bus stop, including this cute girl there that's deep into whatever is on her laptop. And then a boy bikes by past and he suddenly notices her and he falls in love. But sadly for him, the attention isn't reciprocated. So the rest of the movie, he goes through a series of gags to try to get her to notice him. He first offers her flowers, then he tries to impress her with a motorbike that he stole, and he attempts to bribe her with ice cream and a handful of other tricks. But after many failed attempts, he's dejected and he just decides to go home and watch TV. But as he's flipping through the channels, he stumbles across The Empire Strikes Back. Then he gets the best idea in his head ever, and he goes down into his basement and builds himself a Boba Fett costume in sort of a last ditch effort to try to impress her. So he goes back to the bus stop with his costume, and he's a little nervous at first, but then she catches a glimpse of him, and it actually worked. And now suddenly she's interested in him because it turns out she was looking at the Boba Fett fan club website on her laptop the entire time. So he grabs her by the waist and they blast off into a new future together. The end. Anyway, that was my concept. I thought it was simple and cute and a universal story that people seem to really enjoy. I uploaded it a dozen years ago and it's gotten about 27,000 views on it since then, which isn't a ton, but I have a small channel here and I did very little, if anything, to promote it. So I guess those aren't terrible numbers, but I was hoping that maybe by revisiting it in this video, maybe I can drive those numbers up a little bit more because I don't know, I think it kind of deserves a second chance. I'll put a link to the full movie in the description and at the end of this video so you can go watch it after this. And if you pay close attention in it, you might spot a couple Easter eggs throughout the movie that I put in there, like Jamie and Adam from Mythbusters make an appearance, and Tori, Grant, and Carrie are also in there. The motorcycle with a sidecar that goes by every so often is actually supposed to be my son and I, because I have an actual motorcycle with a sidecar in real life that we would go on trips and stuff back then. I still have the piece in my possession. I managed to hold on to. This movie was pretty fun to animate. My office didn't have curtains or any way to block the sun from coming in, so I had to do all my work at night. And I tried to film at least one shot every evening, but it was winter time, so it got dark pretty early. So I had a few hours each night to play with. I just used whatever lamps I had to light it, and they probably weren't the best as they didn't have a consistent output or whatever you call it. So you can see some flickering and stuff here and there, but it's not terrible. I really didn't know what I was doing, and that might show, but it was my first one, so that's okay. I built a little jig out of Lego to hold my phone and added wheels to it so it could be used on the train track that ran in front of each of the buildings. And I also added a crank to it for some shots so I could pan the phone across the screen one frame at a time. And then for the final shot of them flying off, I added this extension arm to the camera jig to hold the figures and a ramp for the whole assembly to go up slowly as I animated it. Just off screen, I kept a pile of the various bits that I needed or had already used. It was kind of a mess just outside of the camera's view. I also kept a library of the different minifigure heads that I owned on a stand here so that I could easily access a different face if I needed to change anyone's expression. I also remember the phone dying a lot and losing connection to the iPad, so it was always kind of nerve-wracking to potentially lose an entire scene at any given moment. But After a few weeks, I had all my scenes filmed. The only editing software I had back then was iMovie. It was fine for my needs, I guess. Nothing fancy. But then again, this was all new to me, and I didn't know how to do anything fancy anyway. But it all worked out okay. Um, Afterwards, I thought about how much fun it was to do, and I planned to follow it up with a second movie. This one would be titled Nightmare on Brick Avenue, as it was going to be sort of a horror story sort of thing, but with a little twist. I had a basic plot in my head, and somewhere I had made some quick thumbnail sketches of the different scenes, but sadly, those are lost to time, and I can't remember exactly how the film was going to end. I do recall filming the first couple scenes and thought those were long lost, but like I said, the at the beginning of this video, I accidentally stumbled upon those files. So the sequel here opens up with the two characters from the first movie, but time has passed and they're a couple now, and now they're getting married. I did a couple different takes of them at the wedding. I never really storyboarded anything. I just sort of think about it in my head and then just sort of film it. And if it works, it works. And if not, I'll just redo it all. And then after the wedding, they go and buy a house, and then that's as far as I got with the film scenes. The rest of the story involved them buying a fancy new car and a boat and all sorts of luxury items for their new home, maybe even some Lego sets. Eventually, the bills started to come in, but they would ignore them and just throw them in a pile on a table. The scenes would kind of go back and forth between them continuing to frivolously shop and the piles of bills continuing to grow until the table collapses under the weight of all the unpaid bills. And then from the wreckage emerges this giant bill monster that terrorizes them. I did a little modeled, multi jointed little monster figure with all these arms and all these spikes coming off him and all the Lego mail pieces stuck all over him. But I think I have that somewhere. Maybe I'll try to dig that up. From this point in the story, I don't really recall what happens. I know I had some more scenarios and a satisfying ending to it, but for the life of me, I can't remember what that was. What did they do? Did they finally get rid of the monster? If so, how? I don't know. I can't remember right now. Maybe I'll think of it later, or maybe you can come up with a conclusion. But anyway, that was my dumb little sequel idea. I did make a coming soon poster for it. As you can see, it has the same characters as the first movie did, played again by my fictional actors of William Lund and Leah Gott. If you don't get that reference, William Lund would be, Bill Lund for short, and Bill in Denmark is where Lego's from. And then Leah Gott is a play on Leg Gott, which is Danish for play well, and when combined is the origin of the name Lego. So I don't know, I thought those were clever little names for them. But before I was able to finish the movie, I ended up getting rid of all my Lego in one fell swoop because I tend to do that. I just get so far and deep into something and then just one day decide to give it all up. I can't explain it. It's just what I do. This wasn't to fund a new project or anything, as I ended up donating it to Brickmania in Minneapolis, which is a huge Lego display, museum, and shop where they sell their own military kits and have a massive city layout that people can visit. But with my sizable donation, they kind of gave me an unofficial lifetime membership there. So for a while, I would go and hang out with them in the back room and have access to all their well organized drawers of pretty much every Lego piece ever. And I did a few more custom designs, but then my visits became less and less frequent, as I probably got into some other hobby at that point and kind of moved on. But all in all, it was a ton of fun while it lasted, and I still love Lego and buy a few kits here and there, but nowhere near like I did back then. Sad story, really. But anyway, that's about all. I just wanted to reminisce about the time I was really into Lego and made a movie 12 years ago. I thought it turned out not that bad for being my first attempt, and I don't know, I liked it, and I wish I finished the second one though, but oh well. I'll put a link to the completed one in the description, like I said, and also here up in the wherever. So check it out if you haven't seen it. And if you have, go watch it again and maybe look for those Easter eggs. Um, for some reason, I had the comments turned off of it for a few years as it got designated as being for kids. I don't know how that happened, but I turned them back on. So go there and comment on it and let me know what you think. That's about all. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Darn, that's the end.
Thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Dustin Cropsboy. Also check out our TeePublic page for t-shirts you can buy to help support this channel, or just go to the website dcbvarietyhour.com for all the links.